Good evening, everyone. I'm John Stewart and the Executive Director of the Miami Beach Urban Studios, and I'm an Associate Dean for Cultural and Community Engagement at FIU's College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts. And on behalf of FIU and my colleagues from the Betsy Hotel, I want to welcome you to our 43rd Monday night, Zen and the Art of, where we zoom into your homes to bridge the miles that have risen between us during COVID-19. Tonight, our focus is on world travel as it impacts those in the LGBTQA+ space. We'll get very briefly into international laws, mentioning countries with laws that protect and destinations with laws and without laws that don't protect enough. And we'll hear directly from an intergenerational brain trust of LGBTQA+ travelers who are also activists. They'll talk about their own experiences and then share their views on areas of global advocacy that they believe must be addressed to make the world safe for everyone. And because one of our special guests, George Neary, wrote the book on what makes Miami Beach one of the best places in the world for LGBTQA+ travelers, we'll touch on that as well. As usual, I invite you to send me questions that I'll try to pose to our guests after 7:30. And if you send me your email address, I'll be sure to pass on your questions to any of our three guests if they remain after the Q&A period. So just one more thing before we move forward. Let me take a moment to thank two of our special FIU discipline area partners who helped us spread the word about tonight's program to alums and current students. One is Dr. Michael Chang, Dean of the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, and Dr. Erica Jane Friedman, Associate Director of the LGBTQA initiatives in the Department of Academic Affairs. Now, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce my partner in crime in this series. And you used to really hound me for saying partner in crime, Deborah, because that's not so zen, but Deborah Briggs, VP of Arts and Community Engagement at the Betsy. Over the past decade, Deborah and her family, who own the Betsy, have generously advocated in the LGBTQA+ space, and that includes embracing the regional community as well as travelers coming to the area in arenas that include arts and culture programming and so much more. So Deborah will introduce our guest and we'll get the program underway in earnest. Deborah, it's always great to see you. I know it's Monday night if you're on the other end of our Zoom Zen session.
Exactly. So welcome everyone. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the Betsy Hotel family, as well as my colleagues and friends who care deeply about these causes. That's pretty much everyone I know, and that includes some additional community partners as well, which I'd like to mention now. These are organizations that helped us build an audience for tonight, not mentioned in order of importance because they're all important to us. The City of Miami Beach Department of Cultural Affairs, the Arts and Business Council of Miami that has come on this week as a partner for all of the events that remain this spring semester, the Miami-Dade Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association, the Greater Miami and the Beaches Hotel Association, and the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Greater Miami Beach Visitors and Convention Authority. Thank you everyone for coming on board and agreeing with us that exploring LGBTQA+ issues related to travel is very important. And here's what we're going to talk about tonight. Though it is the 21st century, and many of us here tonight live on the liberal side of the spectrum, where differences are embraced, traveling while LGBTQA+ is not always easy, not always safe, and not always what you might expect. And most important, we're underscoring this tonight, it's not the same everywhere. In researching the topic for tonight, I'll let you know that you can find articles with this title everywhere on the internet. Quote, gay travelers risk their life and safety at home and abroad when they travel. Doesn't sound good. So to provide a baseline for elevated conversation, I just wanted to share a little factual information gathered by Asher and Lyric Ferguson, who blog about staying safe while traveling. They studied 150 world destinations. I'm going to sort of subtitle this, Did You Know? So did you know that in 2019, Sweden was named the most LGBT-friendly country in the world? Canada ranked second safest, followed by Norway, Portugal, and Belgium. The UK is sixth safest on the list. And the US, guess what, is 24th. And that's because gay rights vary from state to state. Here are the top 5. California, we all know the city of San Francisco has the highest LGBT population in the USA. And it has hate crime protection in place to protect against hate and bias crime based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The state of Washington, Minnesota, Colorado, and New York, the same, all with hate crime legislation in place. So how about the worst states to travel? And again, this is according to Asher and Lyric Ferguson. So Alaska, Alabama, West Virginia, Arkansas, and Montana. And that would be because there is no legislation in place that protects LGBTQA plus travelers as they travel. And now, because we're proud about how Miami and Miami Beach, and trust me that George Neary will tell you more, here we are to get started. Miami attracts more than 1 million LGBT visitors a year. The Miami area as a whole has been gay-friendly for decades and is one of the few places where the LGBTQ community has its own Chamber of Commerce. The Miami-Dade Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, MDGLCC, is one of our sponsors tonight. And it's the largest chamber of its kind in the country. Miami Beach has been flying the rainbow flag for decades and passed Florida's first permanent ordinance banning discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in 1992. So I've laid out the subject matter, just a little bit of a backdrop, a platform on which to have a conversation. Let me introduce you to our 3 special guests. Here is how Barry Hoy describes himself. Barry is a Canadian currently living in New York. He fell in love with traveling the first time he flew to Hong Kong when he was a child. And since then, he's been exploring new destinations each year. Barry loves experiencing different cultures and also trying local food. He always has taken pictures while traveling, even while he's at home, and he turns every moment into memories. His Instagram and blog share moments, adventures in New York, journeys in self-discovery, experiences traveling the world, and favorite brands, which he takes with him while traveling. He's a contributing editor and writer for Swagger magazine, a global correspondent for Man About World, contributing writer for Out Traveler, and he writes for Passport magazine, Outings and Adventures, and he is an ambassador for I Love Gay Travel and a proud IGLTA media member. Barry, I'm proud to say, has visited the Betsy and has taken some really beautiful pictures of what we do and what we have at the Betsy, and thank you for that, Barry. Teraj is a model, songwriter, social media influencer, and dancer born in Miami's Liberty City and a graduate of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. DASH, which is design, what does DASH stand for?
Design and Architecture Senior High.
Yes, Design Architecture Senior High. After graduating from DASH, Teraj, I'm so proud of him, he went on to Cornell University and got a degree in architecture and returned to his musical roots and started working on a debut album. Through sheer determination, he produced an 8-track EP with songs inspired by chapters of his life. He wants to inspire and uplift listeners and encourage them to celebrate humanity through life's splendor and hardships. He's working on new releases now, and he's also a world traveler. He's actually Barry's partner on the road and a bisexual advocate for Black Lives Matter and LGBTQA causes. And now our master Miami Beach guy, George Neary, is a historian, preservationist, marketer, and promoter, ingredients for a first-rate ambassador of our Magic City. He's created a tour company called Tours R Us, curating tours that concentrate on the historic communities of Miami Beach, the Art Deco District, Mimo Resort Architecture, Wynwood, etc. And it includes Overtown, Coconut Grove, and beyond. He was previously Associate Vice President of Cultural Tourism at the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, in charge of the creation and implementation of arts and culture programs for Miami-Dade County. George has traveled the world for Miami and spreading love and learning about the arts globally. Through his tenure, his targets were always cultural tourism, heritage tourism, and gay and lesbian tourism. And then prior to that, he was the executive director of the Miami Design Preservation League of Miami Beach, where he was responsible for creating marketing and public outreach to preserve the historic Art Deco District, better known as South Beach. So we're proud to welcome Barry, Teraj, and George to our program tonight to talk about LGBTQA plus travel in the world, to share their experiences and to make recommendations for positive change. George is going to open things up and take us forward. George.
I'm ready to go. Thank you very much. As you
Go.
heard, I have 20 years experience working in the gay and lesbian marketing promotion area. Hence, I'm wearing my International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association hat because I'm their Hall of Fame person for until May. So I'm very pleased to be able to be representing that organization, as well as the Miami-Dade Gay and Lesbian Chamber, which you've heard is the largest chamber of its kind in the United States. But I want to concentrate on Miami and start on a positive note. I did some research as well, and I reached out to the Convention Bureau, my former employee, and they put together, we are one of the few cities, if not the only city in the United States, that has about 16 events that take place throughout the year. And one of the things that I was most proud of is that when I did travel and trade shows and had information for tourists inquiring about Miami and Miami Beach, we were one of the only destinations that had events for women. So I just want to say that Sweet Heat Miami, Fling Women's Weekend, Aqua Foundation, those are three of the things that we promote now and we promote in the past, as well as Sizzle, which is an African-American based event that happens around Memorial Day. And we just have so many events. We have one of the largest prides in the United States that I was one of the founding members of, an Outshine Film Festival, and Gay 8 in Miami, which is usually in February, and I could go on and on. So we're fortunate that we have such a dedicated group of activists and energetic LGBTQ folks that really want to promote and highlight our community. But I want to ask our guests, since they, know Miami, what is their feeling about traveling to Miami and Miami Beach?
Oh yeah, so Miami, it's my hometown, born and raised. So I would definitely have to say, going back now as an adult, it's such an incredible experience just to see how much Miami has changed over the past couple of decades. Because growing up, it was very different. I grew up in Liberty City, which is a predominantly Black African-American community with very strong religious ties and beliefs. So the LGBTQ plus community wasn't necessarily embraced back in my day growing up, but it's definitely come around so much more, where you see the community active in church and all of that stuff, and just going across and experiencing what Miami Beach is about, and just seeing how the LGBTQ plus community is just embraced and celebrated is such a beautiful and amazing thing. So it always warms my heart every time I go back home.
And for me, as
That's good to hear.
visitor, so obviously I'm born and raised in Toronto, but visiting Miami, it's great. Like, it feels like home, especially now that I'm visiting his family as well. But just walking down the street, like I don't feel like it's somewhere where I'm unsafe or unwelcomed. So I definitely feel welcome visiting Miami, and we always keep going back.
And it's a place where you don't even get the gaze, like the staring gaze. And it's incredible that you could just be 100% your authentic self. So.
Well, I love to hear that, because so many places call themselves gay friendly, and we are so much more than that, and so much more settled in our gayness, that it's just taken for granted by so many people here. Restaurants, hotels, shopping. I mean, museums. I mean, we've had lots of gay-focused exhibits at a number of History Miami, for instance, and the Perez Art Museum, and FIU itself out at their main campus had an amazing gay and lesbian program. I think last year it was really great. So I second what you're both saying, and it's just a wonderful community to live in, and we're so welcoming. So I'm glad that you have that feeling.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite integrated as well. Like just walking down Ocean Drive, just for example, seeing Palace Bar now, where people are having brunch, but it's not just LGBTQ people having brunch. It's everyone, and it's just integrated. And it just so happened there's a drag show going on, but everyone's welcome. Everyone joins in.
Well, it's kind of the way I feel during Gay Pride, which is in April. We have I think it's 11th anniversary, 12th anniversary. I can't remember the exact number, but you should see it when you goes down Ocean Drive. All the participants, the hotels provide multicolored beads. They have rainbow different things that their patrons can wear, and everyone gets into it. And it's really supported by tourists and locals alike. And it's much more than just a small group of LGBTQ folks, but it's really the whole community, the police, the fire, everybody coming together to celebrate.
And Teraj will be too humble to say, but he will be performing at Miami Beach Pride.
Really?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. This upcoming September, I'm one of the acts that'll be performing.
My goodness. Well, that's great. I didn't realize that. That's great news. I'll tell some of your Dash folks so they can come over and watch.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
You better believe I'm going to have it everywhere. Everybody's going to know.
He'll be performing, and then George will be in the backstage having cocktails. How about that?
Yes, I love that. I love that. Well, let me ask you, what are some of the challenges do you think now in gay travel in a general sense, beyond the good news of Miami and Miami Beach?
Oh, it's like where to start. I guess just to open it up, there's at least 72 countries where same-sex relations, homosexuality is still illegal or criminalized. And it's interesting for me because I want to tie this back to home, because like Miami is just representative of such a melting pot of so many different people, so many different cultures, and so many different beliefs. And a lot of those people come from a lot of these countries where homosexuality is still criminalized. And just for us personally, one of the difficulties is doing research and knowing where you'll actually be safe to be yourself while traveling, and knowing some of the local laws so you don't necessarily put yourself, for lack of a better phrase, in harm's way, or you do something that might land you in prison or get arrested.
You're suggesting that travelers do some research before they go to a particular country and find out what some of the rules are or the regulations, so they don't find themselves in an uncomfortable situation.
Most definitely. And with social media, especially like with the prevalence of travel, everybody wants to do it. And people living in bubbles, whereas they take for granted some of the freedoms and the liberties that they have. They might just find themselves traveling to a place where it's not necessarily safe for them to be out and proud and their authentic self. So it's definitely something that you have to take into consideration.
Like even as simple as even thinking of when you book a hotel, for people like us, when we travel, one of the things, like a challenge would be like, do you book one bed or do you book two? Because it might be illegal. You don't want to give the perception that you're together and sleeping together.
Right. Do you have any personal stories that you want to share?
We have several, so many, many.
So pick a few. Because I think when people hear those, they can relate to you better as well.
Yeah. So the funny thing, I guess, should we even?
Yeah. So we went. We're fortunate enough to get invited to Outfest in Philly, which obviously it's to celebrate coming out and
it's for the LGBTQ plus community.
Right. And we got put into a hotel like a block away from the festivities, which is great. But then I guess the person who checked us in, the front desk person, was asking, because the room was booked for the two of us, one king bed, but she was asking, do you want to switch to a room with two beds? And we're like, no, one bed is fine. Are you sure? We have room for two beds. No, it's fine. But she I think
and she kept going
like maybe like 5 times. And even at the very, very end, when she's like, okay, no, it's fine. Here's your key. It's like, but the room has a pull-out. You could pull up a sofa bed.
Yeah.
So it was just very adamant in terms of like, are you sure that you want one bed? And this is for Outfest, a block away from the festivities.
Well, can I just interject? I mean, that's kind of shocking, but again, another good thing about Miami, we have 3 entities with the Gay and Lesbian Chamber that does training for all the hotels that are members of the chamber, the Pink Flamingo training program, and it's done through another program called the Yes Institute. So it's a way that our hotels and frontline staff can solve problems like that before it happens. But we also have the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau does Miami Belongs to Me, I think. It's a training program. And then also, thirdly, is the Visitor Convention Authority. They do a Forbes travel. So between all of these travel programs, we're trying to educate the frontline workers and all their staff to being much more sensitive, being much more aware. So it sounds like some of these other places need to do that sort of. Miami Begins with Me. I'm sorry, that's the training program. But anyway, I just wanted to interject that.
Having the sensitivity and the training, because it's unfortunate because, you know, arriving at a city, they could be the first person that we see, and the hotel could be fully supportive and fully LGBTQ friendly, but all it takes is that one person, and the one person that we see first sets the tone for our stay.
Right.
And on the flip side too, we could talk about another instance where it's not necessarily, you know, the interface of the hotel, but when we traveled to Bermuda, it was quite last minute. So honestly, I didn't have time to do the research beforehand to get a sense of the nature of the island, and it being so, you know, heavy on the UK presence. I thought that it would be a much more open-minded place, but when we went to the beach, we had a photo shoot and we were wearing Speedos, and we were walking back to the hotel along the road, and it was just not once, not twice, it was kind of car after car yelling out like such hateful speech and "Batty boy, Chichiman burn, Batty boy, and we're just like, whoa, this is insane. And it made you feel like, I just felt like I wasn't safe at all. And I was just like, let's just gun this and hurry up and get back to the hotel, because
like all it was really just a basic speed. Yeah, that's it.
Not us holding hands. We've been walking close to each other.
And we're very aware of, like, you know, PDA and not holding hands in public, right, no matter where we go. But yeah.
Well, the Caribbean isn't known for its welcoming atmosphere to the LGBTQ community. You have to really pick your island. Mm-hmm. So that's where research would,
exactly. Having to research where you go and making sure where you are going is safe, accepting.
I think that's really important. So that's a plus. But what about being an interracial couple? How is that different, do you think, for, say, 2 white guys traveling, or to, you know, people that are not as unique as the 2 of you?
Yeah, I would say for me personally, actually for the both of us, representation is very important. And quite frankly, everything, because in terms of the marketing for a lot of places that you see, in terms of how they depict gay couples, generally you'd see someone that's Caucasian or Caucasian adjacent, never really people of color, or even for that matter, an interracial couple. So I would even say, like, he could give personal stories, whereas with his previous relationship where he dated a white guy, their dynamic in terms of how they travel is very different from us. There are places whereas I kind of have to take a back seat and kind of let him lead, in terms of being able to either get something, request something, because there have been times where I will walk up, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant, and I'd ask for something and it's not available, but he'd go up and ask and say, oh yeah, here you go.
And then to further contrast, so this is our dynamic where I would kind of like put myself out to ask, is it'll tend to yield better results. But then with my ex, who is white, when I used to travel with him, then I can see kind of the flip side where he would go ask and he'll get whatever results and I wouldn't. So it's kind of like just the dynamic of who you're traveling with. So with between us, it's like, it's definitely me. I'll go ask, even though I hate asking for things, but I know I have to do it.
And even something as simple as us being together at the airport, or sometimes checking in at a hotel, or even waiting in line in a restaurant, they don't even know that, or they just assume that we're separate parties. Like even when we're standing close to each other, talking to each other. So for one, it's like, no, actually, the both of us were together. So
that also, definitely plays a dynamic in it. Yeah, and it's just funny also because like I have a story when I traveled to London like maybe a decade ago with my ex. We went to a gay bar, and it's just funny, like, you know, London, very progressive. But then when I went to the restroom, someone went up to him and was like, "So did you go to Thailand recently?" Like implying that he got me somehow from Thailand. And it was like he kept asking about like going to Thailand and, you know, where I'm from. But it's like so weird. And this is London, like where you think it would be, you know, very, very accepting.
No, it's amazing. I mean, I follow all that. It's just shocking because so many of us aren't really aware. Well, I hope people out there listening who have an opportunity to internalize some of this, because maybe you're going to be doing training or doing some other kinds of things where you can learn from your experience and then, you know, fold that into the kind of training they're doing so other people can learn more than just making the same mistakes over and over.
And
so
have you noticed a difference when you travel, George? Like kind of like even like, you know, previously versus like today? Is there a change?
Night and day. Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I'm from the dark ages. Are you kidding me? I mean, you know, but no, I mean, I think and it's because part of it can be attributed to greed, to be honest, because people know that the gay and lesbian dollar is there and people want a share of it. So, but if they don't do it right, they're not going to make that happen. But it's just that so many communities have grown up and matured and want to be welcoming to everyone. And so I think that, so, I mean, I know the Caribbean, how difficult that is because I've lived there myself. So I know somewhat of what you're describing, and that was 40 years ago. So I don't know that it's improved necessarily. So again, I would encourage travelers to make sure they know where they're going, to do their research. But there's just so many. I was going to ask you, so what are some of your favorite vacation spots, either together or separate, that you really enjoy?
I would have to say the first thing that's top of mind for me, which is super interesting because when we went to Kenya for his birthday 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago now, it's a place where same-sex relations, homosexuality is illegal. It is criminalized. And if you're caught in the act, I think it's punishable. How many years? It's 14 years in prison if you're simply caught in the act. But when we went, it was the most amazing experience because this is where the training and the sensitivity, I guess, came in. The hotels were so welcoming. It was almost to the point where they were encouraging us to just display.
Because we were taking pictures, for Instagram or whatever, and it was very much like, can we help? You should do this. Like they were really into like seeing us together.
Yeah, and so many, oh my gosh, you're so cute together, etc. And it was just like even beyond that too. We had a chance to go and actually spend some time with the locals, and it was minimum at least 25 gays from the city of Nairobi, and they were just sharing stories about where they've come from and where they're going and how hard they're fighting to where homosexuality is detached from stigma and all the things that they're doing just to acclimate people to just getting used to seeing those types of relationships. And it was just incredible. They took us to like these expat bars.
Because there isn't really like actual gay bars, so because obviously they're not allowed, but then expat bars, like this corner, like this weekend it will be this bar and this corner, and then like next weekend will be another expat bar, and they just kind of like all communicate and know where to go. It was quite amazing.
And they had something literally every single day of the week, so it was amazing to just see such a lively and vibrant and thriving LGBTQ plus community in Kenya.
And this is interesting because that's where you wouldn't.
the least expected.
Yeah, the least expected, right? Because like you wouldn't think Kenya would be the place where you would kind
Exactly.
of get
Because
that.
you've heard all kinds of stories, but
But I
nice
think
to
it's like
hear.
I wouldn't say that would be the experience for everyone going there. So like, you know, everyone
Right.
that's listening, it could be different. Again, you had to do your research, and we were cautious going in. We were, you know, a little bit concerned. But I think it also depends on like kind of like the hotel that you're booking. So again, research.
Yeah. Well, I think what's exciting is our community is a travel-focused community. Gays and lesbians and LGBTQ folks are very loyal, and so continue to frequent places that we've been treated properly, and our word of mouth, good or bad, is important to us. And I know you guys with your blogs and all your writing, you know, you have a really important way to highlight the goodness and maybe some of the not so good. So it behooves travel spots to really up their game, because they need to be able to do that to be able to continue to attract the affluent, the well-educated, the LGBTQ, all of these folks that want to enjoy and have a spectacular visit. So, I mean, that sounds, you know, it's just nice to hear a positive story.
Yes, for sure. And you, George, you mentioned like before, like just joining this call that you've been to Hong Kong a couple of times. How did you find the LGBTQ community there when you were there?
It was very welcoming. I enjoyed, you know, I think food is one of the most important aspects of that community. So I love Chinese food and so people enjoy you enjoying what they have. And so it's wonderful for you to be taken out to dinner, to a meal where you can appreciate them through food, if that makes sense. And they feel the joy that you have, and it sort of goes back and forth. But yeah, I felt, you know, I visited gay bars there and met, you know, lots of Asians, not just Chinese, but, you know, mainland, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and, you know, very welcoming.
All around the world.
Yes. So, I mean, I was there a number of times and really, really enjoyed the experience and would go back in a minute. In fact, Chinese New Year was just last week, and I have a friend who's Chinese Honduran, and he took me to a 100% Chinese restaurant in Sunrise. And it reminded me of Hong Kong to the T. I mean, he spoke Chinese, but it was such a nice memory because I have those great memories of being in Hong Kong myself.
Oh, that's great to hear. I only ask because like my family's from Hong Kong, so I always I'm curious like how other people perceive the city. So I've been back many times, and obviously like, you know, having family there, they're a little bit more kind of like accepting, but like we don't talk about it. So it's kind of weird because like I went with Teraj maybe a couple of years too.
Yeah, it's like 2018.
But again, food, like he gets invited to all the dinners and all the dim sum, and it's always like, you know, bring your friend, but we never truly talked to it. But, you know, I don't think like, did you experience while you were there, Teraj?
Oh, it was an amazing experience for me, but I know that my experience will probably be a little bit different from somebody else's because I do have a lot of friends in great places in Hong Kong. But one of the beautiful things that I find is that, especially within our community, it doesn't matter where you go, the LGBTQ plus community, it always kind of is an anchor or like it grounds us, because you just share stories and then you realize all of our struggles, like it's just common ground. Like our stories are for the most part the same, and it's such an incredible thing to experience. And at the end of the day, we're all human.
No, it's true. And I want to mention, because, you know, we haven't really referred to it, is the importance of the things that our community sees that other people don't see, like architecture, like design, like culture. And we appreciate those things. Like in Miami Beach, we have the world famous Art Deco District. And saved by gays and lesbians who really saw the future of that, didn't want it destroyed, and worked to preserve it. So now it's a gift to future generations. Hong Kong has amazing architecture. And that's, you know, I did take a tour with someone, and, with the different architects and the different buildings. And it was joyous because there's a lot of the old and yet there's, a lot of the new. So Hong Kong has, beyond the culinary, which we talked about, it also has some amazing architecture as well.
But I do have to say, when I first went to Hong Kong with my ex, we did feel pressure to book hotels with 2 beds.
Right.
Everywhere we went within Asia, we did that because of the pressures of kind of like the perception of what people would be thinking. So I think, like, again, going back to kind of like what people, like the challenges, I think that's still something that we as gay travelers have to think about.
So let me ask you a question. Let's talk, since you're both in the media, what about lack of representation? What do you think? How do you think? I think Black Lives Matter has revolutionized the media in so many ways. I'm not saying it's there yet, but I just see so many changes. How do you think representation would help in tourism to be more welcoming, to destinations around the world?
I would even just say it's as simple as just making sure the representation is real and it captures a wide range of people instead of just it's just like the normative, stereotypical white everything. Just include people of color, all colors, in the marketing. And that's something that'll...
And gay couples, right?
Yeah.
And women, I think a lot of people leave women out. So women, it's important to have the whole spectrum and not just, again, as you said, white males.
Yeah, because I think if you normalize it, then that's when it becomes like something that you may not have to think about in the future, because that's the norm now. Where right now, I don't think it is, and the media doesn't portray it that way, so it becomes harder to be a normalized thing.
It definitely contributes to the removal of the stigma when you're exposed in, whether it's visual media, social media, like anywhere, just seeing that representation, it definitely helps overall in terms of making everything better, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, because one of the things about tonight is maybe giving some ideas for the future and how things can improve. Do you have any, besides the media, are there some other ideas that you thought about that you think would be helpful for us when we travel, and would be helpful for the owners of travel places to up their game? So maybe you have some thoughts about that.
In addition to the representation, training and sensitivity, as we talked about earlier, that's one of the most important components. And I'm just going to be blunt, especially like in terms of the US, where, maybe it's not in every state, but in most states where the LGBTQ plus community, that's a protected class in the workplace. Leave the personal beliefs at home and just respect people for who they are. They're just human beings. Do not let your personal beliefs, have an impact on how you execute your job, how you welcome somebody, et cetera. Just leave that at home.
Because again, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, all it takes is that one person. And then like we would question if we would go back to that one hotel. And then if someone would ask us about it, like it'll spread, right? Because then we'll tell our friends, maybe don't go there because they weren't like overly sensitive or appreciative of us visiting. So there's definitely that. And I think just overall awareness. For example, I also write for Passion Passport, which is not an LGBTQ magazine. It's a straight magazine, but they've asked me to write LGBTQ travel guides, just because they want to also be able to talk about our travel journey and kind of like what we would be looking for. So I think that definitely helps with the awareness and just kind of bringing it more mainstream.
Well, that's true. I think, that's very important to be able to get out of our bubble.
Yes.
And be able to share tips and information to people beyond our shores, so to speak. Because what happens is we end up speaking to ourselves, and that's not helpful.
Yep. It's a New York bubble, a New York, Miami bubble, where everything's wonderful and dandy and like everything's safe, but that's not the world. And I think having discussions like this, where we're able to openly talk about our stories and our challenges, and again making it awareness, giving awareness to everyone. I think that helps.
Yeah,
No, I think
definitely give space to communication, sharing stories. That's so crucial, because I can even talk about stories of like growing up in Miami, like where I said like Liberty City, just having conversations with people that I grew up with who weren't necessarily open to the idea of even being friends with someone that is queer, homosexual, etc. But like giving the opportunity to have those crucial conversations, because over time you may have an impact, whereas you open their mind, even if it's just a little bit. And I know that I could speak firsthand in terms of my family, like conversations with my grandmother, with some of my cousins, with some of my aunts, and people that I used to go to church with, etc. So they're definitely much more welcoming. We get invited to the cookouts and stuff like that. My grandmother absolutely loves him. So yeah, just things like that. Just giving space for those conversations.
And I think from, I guess, anyone in the travel space, I think associations like the IGLTA, getting connected with associations like that, which George can talk a lot more about.
Barry, do you want to say what those a little bit more about that organization? Because
yeah, International Gay Lesbian Travel Association. So obviously they help promote and educate travel within the gay space. So I think kind of within the hospitality and travel space, they are the people that, if you are looking for resources, that's the first stop to go.
Well, I was suggesting that I'm going to speak to the head of the gay chamber in Miami, because maybe you guys could come and speak at one of our lunches, because obviously you being a native, you might have some information to share to us about your experiences and things of that nature, like we're doing today. So maybe that's something you could do on a future trip.
I definitely love that. Yeah.
Out of the snow into the sun.
Pardon me?
Out of the snow in New York and into the sun in Miami.
Oh my God, are you kidding? How is it? Well, luckily you don't have to shovel snow, so that's a plus.
I know, thank goodness.
But it's been pretty bad. Usually sometimes in the city it could be worse, or it might not be so bad because of the way the configuration of the buildings. But you've had tons of snow too?
Yeah, snow everywhere.
Can I just jump in here to keep us from talking about snow? But there are so many questions. You guys have just been creating such a stimulating atmosphere. I'm just going to list questions, some of the questions that I have, and you can decide whether you want to answer any of them, none of them, or just keep talking about whatever you want to talk about, including snow. But I'll just say the questions kind of break up into two big groups. One is George and his life, and so there's a question about George and your experiences as a representative traveler, and whether that impacted how you were treated when you arrived in certain destinations. And also, George, there was a question about when you were encouraged to come out yourself personally, to be open about your sexuality. And the other big group of questions kind of revolves around like the important factors that you take into consideration in choosing your next destination. What kind of research do you do? What sources do you use? What hotels do you look at in particular? How do you kind of go through this decision process? And then we've got a couple of random questions about whether you've been to Morocco and whether you have anything to say about the gay circuit party travel boats that were turned away in the Caribbean islands. So all or
why
none
don't we
of those
start
topics.
with you guys, because you're the guests, and let's, like your research, your travel, that sounds like a meaty question.
Yeah, in terms of the research, the one-stop shop, definitely iglta.org for everything, statistics, information in terms of like hotels, cities that are the most welcoming. They have the highest ratings in terms of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, they have travel and country guides in there too. So depending on where you're going, you can kind of go to one spot and kind of get all the information for that particular country. Just in general, I would Google a lot of times like TripAdvisor and kind of get reviews through there. Just because then it's like kind of like live personal experiences. And depending on the country, like if it's like Kenya, before going there, I went to multiple sources because it was a place where, one, I'm not familiar with, and two, I know it's a little bit like touchy in terms of like our situation and like being illegal. So I wanted to confirm what is okay and what's not okay. And we also reached out to some friends as well. So word of mouth, I think, is another good source. Like if someone's been there, I think that's the best reference.
If you need something that's super high level, you could also check out like a podcast. I'm the host of Gay Travel Today. You could get all the info in a bunch of cities that are super LGBTQ friendly as well. Small plug.
No, but that's important because people, are not as knowledgeable as us, perhaps, or worried about where they're going. So these are good ways for them to, for us too, to do some research about how welcoming is this town or city or country. So it's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would just add that like when you're doing research, if you're picking a place to go, if they're not overly welcoming to LGBTQ travelers, do you really want to go and spend your money there is another factor that you might want to consider. Right. Because you're kind of like you're able to use your pink doll to kind of like help make change by going to places that are welcoming.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And George, there was another one for you. I only listed two. I forgot the other one was asking you specifically about untapped opportunities for LGBTQA+ destination marketing.
Well, first of all, I'll answer the question that I like the best, which was about promoting Miami around the world and the reaction. When I got this job in 1998, I would tell people that I was in Miami and they felt sorry for me. But as Miami changed into this world-class destination, people then became jealous of me because I would say I was in Miami Beach, and they were like, "Oh, you're lucky." So, and as the gay community grew in Miami Beach as well, and Miami with events on both sides of the water, it became a place that people have, thanks to celebrities and thanks to TV shows and movies and all this media coverage, a place that people wanted to come visit over and over. I mean, one of the most famous events that hopefully will be resurfaced is the White Party, which is, I think 35 years old. And it was at Vizcaya, this amazing historic home property that really set the stage for what happened in Miami, and all these other events, many of them came from there. So for me, it always was a place that was easy to market, easy to showcase. We had classy materials, and I think people really were interested in seeing and coming and joining. And then when our Basel came, you have that combination of LGBT and culture, and you can't beat that. And people want to come for that particular time. And then the Wine and Food Fest, or the Wine and Food Festival. So we have so many events. President's Day weekend is like amazing because you have the Wynwood Art Fair, you have the Coconut Grove Arts Fair. You have so many things that are taking place, and we're constantly we're the Marine Stadium, architectural wonder. We're in the process of bringing back. So I think in the Art Deco District and the architecture, and also the oldest performing space in Southeast is the Lyric Theater. And that's an amazing architectural wonder. So we have a range of things that we didn't have 20 years ago that now we appreciate, we highlight. So it's an easy sell in a sense. So that's, the story on that.
Okay. Okay, great. Nobody's been to Morocco?
I have.
Oh, you have?
It was great. It was wonderful. I was, I've been to Fez, I've been to Marmaris, all throughout, Morocco. And it was, the capital, the big bazaar. I worked at a student exchange program before I came to Miami, and I took 120 students who were going to spend the summer in Turkey. So that's how I got my trip to Turkey, which, I might not normally have gone. But so I didn't experience, and that was 25 years ago. So it was a pretty under the radar kind of spot, but pretty progressive at its time.
Fantastic.
Well, guys, really interesting. Looks like we lost George. And I was just going to say what a national treasure he is and what a regional treasure he is. I want to thank you guys for.
No, I'm back.
No, he was
Somebody
doing another
calling.
wardrobe change. George, you haven't really told us about your hats. You've been.
Well, what happened is I moved to Miami in the sun and I had a convertible. So I started to have hats, because of that. And before you know it, like umbrellas, I would take them off and leave them. So I never took them off. And little by little, I acquired, I had an exhibit of my hats in Little Havana last year, which was I had about 100 hats on display. So that's why I wore a couple tonight in honor of our guests who, he's from Miami. In Miami, if no one knows, it's a Native American expression, means sweet water. So if you learn nothing else, you'll learn that.
Yes, exactly. No, a great conversation and really important. And I want to thank you guys for it. Am I cutting anybody off? Is there anything else you guys want to say, Barry and Teraj, that we missed?
No, just thank you again for this opportunity. I love sharing our stories. So
Yes,
it's great. It's great. And I hope you guys will come back again and again. We love having you on South Beach. And
oh my God.
fantastic. So for those of you who would like to take the greatest tour on earth when you visit Miami Beach, you definitely need to contact George via his Tours R Us website. That's a curated tour of the Art Deco District and all those other neighborhoods I mentioned. Let me share a bit about next week's program before we go. On March 1st, we're going to be screening The Artist's Wife in partnership with O Cinema. The format of the evening is always slightly different when we screen movies, in that we send out access information when you RSVP. Everybody watches the movie at 7 on their own, and then we gather afterwards for a talk back about the subject matter in the movie at 8:30. The Artist's Wife is about issues related to Alzheimer's, as well as things that ripple out from that experience between the patient, the caregiver, and the community. There's also a component of the film that focuses on women's empowerment and the decision a caretaker, who is also a wife in this case, makes to either pursue her own work or to let that go to care for an ill partner. And very interesting, we're going to feature 2 special guests for that talk back that follow the movie, to include flutist and former arts and culture host of CBS Sunday Morning, Eugenia Zuckerman, and Dr. William Vega, who's a distinguished professor and senior scholar for community health at FIU. He's also a member of the Us Against Alzheimer's Advisory Board. Eugenia Zuckerman has just written a book of poetry about her own experience with early onset Alzheimer's. It's a beautiful book, and it's called Like Falling Through a Cloud. I encourage you to join us, and if you can't for some reason, to buy her book. It will really touch you. She is just beginning her Alzheimer's journey, and she can really reflect on it in real time. John, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank you guys. This was a great conversation. I love the dynamics. I hope you have a great time up playing in the snow next weekend or whatever, and then come down and spend lots of time down here with us. George, thank you as always. So I'm going to invite everybody on the call to unmute and to say thank you and good night. And that's how we can. Oh, actually, was I muted that entire time or no?
No.
No. Okay, just asked everybody to unmute if they wanted to. So
thank you, everybody. It was exciting, wonderful.
Thank you.
Glad to meet you too.
Guys, it was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Stories.
Very interesting.
Thank you very
Very
much.
interesting information.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Well done.
Well done.
Yes.
Thank you. Did George leave?
No, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. You can't leave until the host. I mean, you're a host.
I'm here.
Jonathan, you think I'm
Jeff
controlling?
is there.
That was strange.
Yeah, Deborah, you can't.
Show us another hat, George.
I can leave.
Yeah, George, a goodbye hat. Come on.
I have one.
Where are you? I got.
Take care, everyone. Ed, take care of yourself.
Barry and Teray, this is Alan Beck. I was really surprised to hear about your experience at the Philadelphia Hotel. It's such a gay, wonderful, welcoming city. And it just was really shocking to me.
It was shocking for us too, especially given the nature that we were there for Outfest. And at the hotel, they were even provided with our welcome drink. It was full of
Rainbow things.
everything.
Wow.
Rainbow.
I personally think it's just that one person. So
Yeah.
again, like, it's all it takes is that one person. But we had a great time there.
I'll be
Other,
in New York
That's
next
such an
month.
important
I'd like
lesson.
to hear more.
yeah, that is an important lesson. All it takes is that one person.
Right. Everybody counts.
Yeah.
Everything everyone does. Yeah.
Yep.
Take
right.
care, everyone.
Good
Stay
night,
safe.
everyone.
Thank you, thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
See
Thank
you
you
at Gay
so much.
Pride, you
Cheers.
guys.
Yes.
See you in September.
George.
Take care,
Hi,
George.
George.
Cocktails.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.